For the recipe card assignment, this is basically what it should look like. You should find your own recipe, one that you create or one that you find online, and you should have a shaded heading, and specifically it's a shaded heading. It's not a heading with a color box underneath it. So if I double click inside of here, you can see that when I come to the shading area in the paragraph panel, you can see that it has shading here. The reason why we do this is now when I move it, the box is going to move with it. This is also a well-designed card, but as you can see, the text moves independent of the box underneath it, so that is not the type of shading that is required for this particular part of the assignment. In terms of the ingredients and the directions, what I'm looking for is that you can properly use bullets and numbering. So you'll have a column on the left with your ingredients and a column on the right with your directions. I'm going to highlight these and scroll down and make sure that you're using the actual bulleted list feature. And then I'm going to highlight these and make sure you're using the numbering feature. Now for the ingredients list on the left, you should not have just typed 1/2 cup or 1/3 cup or whatever it is. If it's a fraction, and hopefully you do have fractions in there, I'm going to go into type in tables and open up the Glyphs panel. And you should have a very common font that has all of the glyphs that you need here. If you can't find the percentage or the fractions for your font, then change your font. So this is just Helvetica Neue. And what you're going to do is it's going to come and you're probably going to see entire font at first. And glyphs are basically just other symbols. This is where we get the accent marks or like Russian glyphs or whatever the case may be. And you're going to have to search through all of this. So instead what I do is I go down to numbers, and this is where you should see the fraction. So instead of having typed 1/2, you're going to double click 1/2, and you can replace it like I am. So 1/3 and double click there, and those are actual proper fractions. So you need to make sure to have that. Another thing is that teaspoon and cup and tablespoon all have abbreviations. So if we look at this other student, you can see that they use the teaspoon, tablespoon, cup abbreviations. So if you don't know those, you can look them up if you want to use the abbreviations. As far as the directions, again, they should be a numbered list. They should also have hanging indents so that all the text lines up independent of the numbers. So we shouldn't see the text coming over underneath the numbers. That's really important. This degree symbol, instead of writing out, I think over here, see how instead of writing out degrees, you should be using the degree symbol. Again, that can be found in the glyphs. Now, both of these are very well designed in terms of the actual aesthetic. This one is using an illustration, and you can see different pumpkin seeds are a part of that illustration, so that this just didn't kind of sit by itself. So this would be a really good idea. Another thing to do is use a photo. So this one's actually 2 pages, front and back, and the reason why is because there's just so many steps with it, and I'm absolutely okay with that happening as well. But you do need to pop a photo in, so you can see that the student got clever and kind of shoved it up in the corner because they didn't have a lot of space left and thought it would be a good idea to have a picture on the front instead of on the back. So I think that is it. Yep. And the space after paragraphs. So it's important that these aren't sitting like right next to each other. It's easier to read for people and know what step they're on when they see a very clear space. So when you do that, you can highlight all of your text. I'll just highlight this one paragraph. And as you can see, there is space after the paragraph. So that says every time you hit enter or return, it's going to add a big gap between it, which is definitely something that all recipes do. Well, if they're well-designed recipes, so that we can easily go to step 2 and see that chunk is the chunk that we are on. This is the part of the process that we are in. So you can probably see that here too for something that's a little bit smaller, but it still uses the same principle. So don't get crazy with this. Remember that people need to be able to read it quickly because they are trying to do these steps in order with timing. So don't make it overcomplicated with like low contrast or like a picture in the background that distracts us. So think about all those considerations when designing your recipe card.